average Rockport Line train measures somewhere around 566 feet. Meanwhile, at almost 9,600 feet, it would take almost 17 Rockport Line trains to equal the length of one Norfolk Southern Greenville District intermodal. And while Massachusetts does have freight trains, they simply cannot compare to the trains found in South Carolina and Georgia. Now, given the use of the South Carolina flag in my channel art, one can imagine that I have a particular affinity for Greenville, South Carolina, and its surrounding railroads. Greenville Yard in particular is a core reason of why I hold this line in such esteem. Few places offer you a better front row seat to small switching yard action. Speaking of, it looks like this locomotive lash-up is on the job. I wonder what it's up to. Let's stick around and find out. Now, for those who are unfamiliar, the aforementioned Greenville District spans from How Y in downtown Atlanta to the bustling Greenville Yard, anchoring point for the region's local trains, a work stop and terminus point for multiple manifest trains, and most importantly, a crew change location. However, once that crew change is complete, the majority of these trains don't stick around for long. Yes, indeed, for many of these trains, Greenville is just another place to check off the timetable. Their real destination is Atlanta's massive Inman train yard, and they will be riding every notch of power they have to get there. Fortunately, despite its big city status, Greenville's still a pretty interesting place to watch trains. And even though the Greenville District can't quite compete with Atlanta on variety or scale, it still manages to hold its own. For example, we get an awful lot of unusual cargo. In 2024, renewable energy is big business. Therefore, it takes a big train to move the implements of said business to their final destinations. These long cylindrical objects are wind turbine tower segments. They will soon tower high in the air, supporting the blades and generators needed to produce electricity via the wind. There are precious few other modes of transportation better suited to carry large quantities of big and heavy cargo than the railroad. Big cargo is big money for the Class 1 railroads, so if they can find a way to fit it on a train, they will. And since the Greenville District is part of one of the most direct routes from Atlanta to New York City and beyond, we see our fair share of these heavy haulers of the high iron. So much so that I've already made a separate video all about it. Check it out if you get a chance. Now, despite its name, the Greenville District doesn't just go through Greenville. The majority of the line is actually in Georgia. Like I said before, the railroad and large quantities of oversized cargo go together like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I'm afraid I can't tell you what these large pipes are going to be used for, or where their final destination will be. But what I can tell you is they certainly make an impressive sight rolling through downtown Toccoa, Georgia. If you really want to talk about impressive, wait till you see all the other places these rails traverse and the variety of trains that traverse these rails. Now, wait a minute, I hear you saying. Austell isn't part of the Greenville District. And you would be correct. Here on the Greenville District, all trains are similar in one distinct way. They are either coming from or headed to the bustling tracks surrounding the Atlanta, Georgia area, including Hal Y, Inman Yard, and of course, the famed Austell, Georgia. Now, if you're interested in the inner workings and mechanics of Austell proper, I'd go check out the Mainline South video on Atlanta, Georgia, and the railroads within. But to summarize, Austell is the major junction point west of Atlanta, where trains from Chattanooga travel via the Atlanta North District, and trains from Birmingham travel via the Atlanta East End District. Both districts converge here in downtown Austell, and both districts have trains which eventually end up on the Greenville District. Now where are we? Well, truth be told, I'm not quite sure exactly where we are, but what I can tell you is that we're on the highway between Athens and Commerce, Georgia, along which one can spot one of the many branch and short lines which radiate from the Greenville District, with this particular short line traveling from Athens, Georgia, and connecting up with the Greenville District in Lula. Those small branch and short line trains are directly supplied and fueled by the Greenville District, which acts as a central artery funneling the various goods to the industries that need them. However, out of all the commodities that are carried on the Greenville District, whether that be manifest freight, unit trains, or of course intermodal, there is one that's particularly lauded in Georgia. Passing through the chicken meccas of Gainesville and northeast Georgia, the Greenville District is particularly noted for its abundance of large unit grain trains, which supply the region with an abundance of feed from the bountiful Great Plains. Poultry is a billion-dollar industry here in the Gainesville region, and with over 29.3 million pounds of chicken to produce, these unit grain trains have to be absolutely massive in order to efficiently fuel the region's many poultry farms and plants. Now we know where this grain comes from large farms and processing plants out in the Midwest. But what happens to the grain when it arrives in Georgia? Well, they end up here, at the Cargill and Pilgrim's Pride plants here in Gainesville, Georgia. And it looks like grain wasn't the only thing brought from out west. It's the Reading Heritage Unit, a beautiful SD70 ACE painted in the Reading colors. Thanks to these unit grain trains' Midwestern origins, they sometimes travel down to Georgia equipped with a Heritage Unit. To add to the thrill, it's often a multi-day process to unload one of these unit grain trains. That, combined with the fact that the Cargill plant owns 2 of its own shunting locomotives, means that the power which brought this train down from the Midwest is currently tied down on a siding, giving lucky onlookers a rare extended opportunity to photograph and film one of Norfolk Southern's best heritage units. Speaking of heritage units, what did I tell you? The Greenville District is full of surprises. As we find ourselves all the way back in Toccoa, Georgia, we see yet another one right in front of us. A pair of ancient GP60 locomotives. about reliable workhorses, these GP60s have been around for over 30 years. A former facet of mainline freight service, these once mighty iron horses have been relegated to local service, their old jobs taken by more modern locomotives. Still, history continues to live on here in Toccoa, Georgia, as these two GP60s relentlessly move freight up and down the Greenville District. And just as this GP60's service life is slowly coming to an end, so must our time on the Greenville District come to an end. But don't be too sad, dear viewer. After all, on the Greenville District, there's always one more train to catch.